Dear students, welcome to Swayam Shikshaa. Welcome to our current affairs tidbits. So, today's article, that is about WTO trips, we'll try to understand what this article is all about. Now, going ahead with this discussion, first of all, what we should understand is India was one such country along with South Africa, which was continuously pressing for waivers in the WTO. Especially with respect to these aspects related to vaccines, therapeutics and other important aspects like the related technologies and drugs. Now the problem here is, what we should understand about vaccine inequality here is, there are certain countries, especially the African nations, if we see, hardly or barely 11% of Africans have been fully vaccinated. This clearly shows that there's a lot of vaccine inequality that is clearly visible with respect to COVID pandemic. Now, what we should try to understand here is, India was one such country who was continuously fighting for this waiver, but at the same time, now what we find in the discussion is basically that India being edged out, that is, these vaccine waiver would be purely geographically limited, and there are signs that it is going to exclude India. So that means this waiver kind of aspect will be excluding India. Now this is something like a country which was really trying to make an impact with respect to waivers related COVID related aspects, the same country being excluded. Now this particular article basically talks about, for economic diplomacy, is it a failure of economic diplomacy of India, or is it because of some problems within the domestic arena of India? So what this article says is, for economic diplomacy to basically flourish, it has to be backed by a concrete actions on the domestic front. That means unless and until your actions on the domestic front are really good, nothing much can be done at the economic diplomacy front. So this is what so that means if you want to win your economic diplomacy, okay, so you need to focus on actions at the domestic front. So this is what this article basically talks about. Now going by the basic logic of WTO. So under WTO, especially there is this agreement called as Trade Related Intellectual Property Rights. So this TRIPS agreement came into existence basically after the formation of WTO in 1995. And as part of TRIPS agreement, it was more a stringent agreement. But at the same time, there are certain waivers which were allowed in the TRIPS. For example, one such waiver was the compulsory licensing, and there is something like the parallel imports. But this compulsory licensing is one such waiver which was given to especially countries like India, wherein we can come up with waiving off. That means, suppose there is a health hazard, we can temporarily override this particular patent and temporarily give license to certain companies for manufacturing the generic form of the original drug. So this can be done. So that means these waivers are given for our benefit, but which India could not utilize it during COVID pandemic. So what this article basically says is, why did India fail, or what are the main areas where India has failed domestically? Okay, so first thing is, the problem here is this TRIPS waiver which the developed countries are talking about is geographically limited, and it is probably going to exclude India. That is the main problem here. And India was a front runner in terms of bringing such waivers with respect to vaccines, therapeutics, drugs and technologies. Okay, so now the thing is, internally during the pandemic scenario, India did not use these waivers. So India was more stressing on the lack of availability of raw materials, etc. But India did not take the benefit of these waivers during the pandemic. So India did not use the waiver which is legally applicable for India during the pandemic. So this is one challenge or one problem which we can observe. Second important aspect is, India did not formulate any national strategy to implement the TRIPS waiver. There was nothing like a national strategy that was formulated. So if you prepare a national strategy, it would act as indirectly a pressing point for putting pressure on the developed countries, especially when they are taking such critical decisions, so which we neglected. Another important aspect is, there was no consensus which was being brought in by our pharmaceutical industries. That is basically Indian pharmaceutical industries, etc. They also had some vested interest or the government itself has failed in terms of bringing these pharmaceutical industries under a single arena, where these pharmaceutical industries, there could have been some consensus. So there are mixed opinions about these waivers in our pharmaceutical industry itself. Then another important aspect is India was one such successful country which has come up with vaccines like Covaxin, etc. So this Covaxin basically is an indigenously developed one, and India should have acted like a leader where it should have shared its technical know-how to other countries, wherein we failed to do that. So India did not unlock its potential in terms of showing the developed world that this is what we can do in terms of sharing the technologies related to our indigenous vaccine. So that we did not unlock our potential, acting as an example to show the world that we can, the vaccine technologies can be shared in this way. So these are some aspects where we failed internally, and this is what has made us, was responsible for economic diplomacy to fail. So I hope this article is clear. We'll come up with few more current aspects on a daily basis. If you like our current affairs, etc., our videos, please do subscribe, do press the bell icon, and do share our YouTube channel to serious aspirants. Signing off. Thank you.